Karoline Leavitt is terrible at her job, which is funny because her job is to lie, and she does that all the time, but it never really seems to stick. And we saw that especially yesterday when Karoline Leavitt and Jesse Waters had a crossover episode on Fox that just no one was asking for, and both decided they'd have a screaming meltdown over a disastrous Trump moment that they both got caught lying about. Yes, it was an absolute disaster on Fox. They were both humiliated. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into Karoline's screaming meltdown, I want to start with one of the most annoying lies she tells, and it's about the UN right here.
The president was blunt, very blunt today. It was definitely useful because these people have to get their act together. Do you think the UN heard the president loud and clear?
Absolutely. In fact, the room was absolutely packed to the walls. Every single leader showed up for President Trump's speech today, and they heard him loud and clear. And I am proud to work for President Trump every day, Jesse, but I was especially proud watching the President of the United States of America bring common sense to an organization that has made no sense for far too long. And the President gave some tough love. He said, "You are all destroying your own countries, and the United States of America was just being destroyed by one of your own." He took one of your own, a globalist in Joe Biden, who had no idea what he was doing. The president took a sledgehammer to the failing globalist world order. He talked about how all of these countries need to have pride in themselves like we do here in the United States of America. They should be proud of their own heritage and culture. And Japan is beautiful, and Italy is beautiful, and the UK is beautiful because they all have their own unique history.
I think anyone who watches this show consistently knows that I have a very personal beef with Karoline Leavitt, and I just can't stand her, and nothing brings me more joy than to call out her bullshit. But this lie in particular, this narrative really that she tries to push really gets under my skin and drives me batshit crazy. Of course the UN was packed. Everyone was there, not for Donald Trump, but because everybody was there. Did you think this was about him? It was not. Karoline Leavitt does this thing when Donald Trump is giving a major address. There's a press conference, some big announcements happening. It's usually about, I guess, Tylenol at this point, causing autism, which is still just not true. No matter how many times Trump screams, don't take Tylenol. But what Karoline Leavitt does is she does this post on Twitter where it's all of the major media outlets and they're covering the press conference. And she's like, "We have the attention of everybody. He's the president of the United States. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Why are you patting yourselves on the back for making news by being an idiot? It doesn't make any sense." Like, if Donald Trump did something horrible, maybe every day, we're going to cover it. It's not a good thing about him. I know I'm just rambling at this point, but it just peeves me so much, especially when Karoline Leavitt is telling stupid lies like she did about the escalator at the UN last night, which, funny enough, she wasn't too bang on about.
All right, Karoline, it does appear to be sabotage with the escalator and the teleprompter. What is the White House going to do about that?
Well, Jesse, that's definitely what it appears to be to me, and that's why I put out a statement earlier. There was some concerning reporting over the weekend from the London Times, as you pointed out, that UN globalist staffers were basically plotting to set up the President of the United States. And first it was the escalator, then it was the teleprompter, and then Katie Pavlich from Town Hall, who we offered a seat in the press pool to cover the President's historic speech today, noticed that the audio inside of the room was much lower and different for the President of the United States than the previous speaker. So when you put all of this together, it doesn't look like a coincidence to me.
Oh no, what a crisis. The fat ass in chief wasn't able to scoot his butt up 7 stairs? It was 7 stairs. Call in the National Guard. We've called them in for less. Should we carry Mr. Trump up the escalator? Like, does he need special assistance? I thought that this was the guy who was in the greatest shape of all time. Are the Big Macs starting to weigh him down, Karoline? But this was such a non-story and a non-issue to begin with. Even when Karoline Leavitt and Jesse Waters were calling for the UN to either be investigated or bombed. Yes, that is what Jesse said. But Karoline, I don't think you were paying attention to that moment, because the real truth about Escalator Gate just came out. Insiders spill embarrassing truth about Trump's UN pratfalls. At the UN, the escalator stopped immediately after Trump and his wife Melania stepped onto it ahead of his major speech. Video showed the president, 79, looking around before he and the First Lady started to walk up the unmoving escalator. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt posted a tweet later demanding an investigation into whether someone had intentionally halted the escalator. But according to someone familiar with the situation, someone in the president's own entourage accidentally tripped the emergency stop. They were able to quickly reset it and move on, but the president's UN challenges didn't stop there, a source told the Daily Beast. As Trump took the podium to speak, he complained that the teleprompter was not working. Instead, he had to read the printed copy of his speech. However, a person with knowledge of the situation revealed that delegations are allowed to bring their own laptops and teleprompter operators, and the UN was not running it for Trump's speech. The source said that the White House had its own laptop and UN technicians were not in the booth for the president's address. Ultimately, the entire situation may have happened because the president's team needed more time to set it up. It was suggested that they did not arrive with enough time to make sure their equipment was plugged in and ready to go. So, once again, our government is run by idiots who are obsessed with lashing out, crying, and going on Fox to complain. This is how our government is run. Or I guess this is how our government is stalled and then walks upstairs and then complains about walking up those stairs. I talked about this in a video earlier this week. I really think that if you are a candidate, a Democrat running in 2028, your campaign, much like, but not in the same vein of the Biden 2020, which is all about we have to come together, because I think there's a certain element that we don't have to come together and that some people need to be held accountable and we need justice and we need Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem and Alligator Alcatraz and we need to send Tom Homan to prison for accepting $50,000 in cash like a Looney Tunes character. Trump needs to get locked up. JD's committed some crimes, I'm sure. I know I said Stephen Miller, Alligator Alcatraz. Maybe we send him to Mars. I don't know. There needs to be accountability. There needs to be, I don't want to call it retribution, but it seems like a more fun word. I don't just want to come together and sing Kumbaya. That's not really the plan here. These people only know one language. It's accountability, right? They only know intimidation, lawsuits, lawsuits, lawsuits. Every Republican in Congress who voted to overturn the 2020 election, yeah, I'd actually like those people to face some justice. But I also think it's important that Democrats running in 2028 talk about just bringing back peace and quiet and not paying attention to what the president says every day and trust in government and knowing that work is getting done without having to see it. Now, I'd like to see a President Newsom, a President AOC, right, President Tim Walz, whoever it is, come out with the big Sharpie and be like, boom, free school lunch, free school breakfast, every kid in America. Democrats did that. Want to call it socialism? Fuck off. Kids should eat. I want that to happen. I also just want to relax a little bit and just take a little time off. And I know I said the opposite of that a couple days ago when I said even if we had a President Kamala Harris right now, I'd want everyone to be engaged. But I just think that a little time off would be great and a little going after the people who have wronged this nation, which Jasmine Crockett, someone who I hope plays an integral role in doing that, talked about as it relates to Tom Homan right here.
Seeing is believing, at least for some of us, because as we know, January 6th is highly disputed about what happened on that day. But, you know, especially if he's not going to come clean about what he did. And with all the conspiracies that this White House and this administration is constantly putting out, the best thing that we can do is have some proof for those that actually want to know the truth. So I hope that we can get that video footage. But last I checked, we're still having problems getting the rest of these Epstein files out of the Department of Justice. So I'm not really sure. It seems like the attorney general is too busy trying to figure out if the president is tweeting her about something or truthing her or whatever you want to call it or texting. I'm not really sure because he's real concerned about Tish James and trying to figure out why we can't prosecute Tish James. Yet sitting in his administration, it seems clear that he has plenty of criminals amongst him, including himself, that maybe should be prosecuted. But we're not going to talk about that.
You know, it is, I do think that this is not just about Tom Homan, but he is another person in a long line of people in this administration. And it's like, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Right. And so I understand why you all are asking for the details, especially because the White House, from the press briefing room, Karoline Leavitt the other day said, oh, he didn't take the money. And then when Laura Ingraham asked him, he said, well, I didn't do anything criminal or illegal. But did you take the money? Because my MSNBC colleague said that there's internal documents that say you did, and it's on camera. That being said, the Department of Justice has acknowledged the letter that the House Judiciary letter. The FBI has not yet acknowledged it. This is from the letter. During the Reagan administration, E. Robert Wallach was convicted for taking payments while promising to influence contracts once he received a Justice Department appointment, despite not having landed a job at the time he pocketed the bribes. That is exactly what Mr. Homan did here. If that's what he did, why didn't the Biden Department of Justice charge him?
I have no idea. Obviously, I don't serve in the DOJ. I'm in the legislative branch. But I
Is that a question you have? Are you wondering?
No, I mean, hopefully we can get an answer to that as well. I think, just this week or last week, I talked about if there was one disappointment I had is the fact that, there wasn't an aggressive prosecution on the now president of the United States, because maybe he could have been sitting somewhere not bothering the rest of us if we had just kind of done our part and made sure there was prosecutions that went forward a little quicker. But as it relates to this particular thing, I think it is important for the American people to understand that when it comes to things such as conspiracy, which is laid out in this letter, it's not whether or not the underlying offense actually takes place. For instance, when you were talking about solicitation, if you're talking about solicitation and it has to do with, say, prostitution, it's not a matter of whether or not the prostitution took place. The solicitation is complete once you actually engage in the agreement. That is enough for solicitation.
These people are crooks, and I would prefer it if we didn't treat them any other way than like crooks. I am certainly going to on this show. We're shooting straight every single day. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And if you want to support the show in another way, as always, you can become a subscriber, free or paid, to my Substack, linked below or right here. And also, I want to ask y'all, I've been thinking about maybe doing some members-only content. Nothing that would be super breaking news, but maybe stuff that doesn't appear on the main show. Just kind of hanging out, talking, rants at the end of the day. I want to know if y'all are interested in that, because I don't want to do it if y'all aren't. But I think it could be fun. I've got some stuff I want to talk about, but we'll save that for a different day. Keep on fighting. Don't let them silence you. Until next time, I'll see you soon.